What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Bob Arum and Andy the Destroyer Ruiz. And I was just wondering, what is the problem Bob Arum has with Ruiz? Better yet, what is the problem that he had with Ruiz? Think about it. Andy Ruiz suffered his first loss to Joseph Parker on a split decision, loss in Joseph Parker's backyard. And after that, he pretty much threw him away. He didn't drop him, but he didn't help him. He didn't promote him anymore. He just decided, you know what? This kid's done. And, with Bob Arum, if you sign a contract with Bob and the contract's not over, despite the fights that you have with Bob, you still have to pay Bob. And I was just thinking, like, you don't like Andy Ruiz. You didn't promote him after the first loss. You dogged Anthony Joshua because Andy Ruiz beat him. So if Andy Ruiz beat him, Andy Ruiz can't punch. He's not a good fighter. Right? And you, by that matter, you dissed Anthony Joshua, for having whatever night he had. It wasn't a good one. Bad day at the office, like Malik Scott says, right? And I was just wondering, I'm like, well, what is the problem with Bob and Andy Ruiz? And I've came up with the answer. Here's the raw truth. People talk about racism, what color you are, what ethnicity or whatever. And that's one of those things that's very, very touchy. But then it's another word that people overlook very easily, and it's called prejudice, And I think Bob Arum was prejudiced towards Andy Ruiz. Hear me out. Not racist. Because he didn't care if Andy Ruiz was Mexican or not. That wasn't the case. You know what the problem Bob Arum had with Andy Ruiz? Was his size. He was fat. See, why do people think that Anthony Joshua was one of the biggest upsets? Really, it was because of how Andy looked. His appearance. Andy Ruiz was a Pillsbury Doughboy built guy, bad built, muffin top, you name it, right? Good fighter, hell of a boxer, all that stuff. He's a hooker. And I think he gets a lot of flack because of how he looks. See, people talk about age. They talk about, of course, how people look. Age is one, appearance is another, right? It's almost like being ugly. Because fat is not an attractive thing, Anthony Joshua is muscular, so that's more acceptable. People look at that, they perceive that guy being a champion. That's why they could not believe that Andy Ruiz did that to Anthony Joshua, and neither could Bob Arum. Why? Because Bob Arum, I don't think he wanted to promote him because he was fat. Now you could say, well, why did he hire him or promote him in the first place? Well, he was an undefeated fighter at the time, and he was an Olympian. That's enough. I think one of the first things Bob Arum saw about Andy Ruiz, he's a fat kid. And I think because Andy Ruiz is a fat guy, I think that was the reason to not promote him. That was the reason that he threw him away like he did. And I think it all comes down to how he looked. He's not a dickhead. Andy Ruiz is a soft-spoken guy most of the time until he beat Anthony Joshua. But most of the time, unless it's Dillian White, right? Andy Ruiz is a pretty mellow fellow. So it's not his personality. You know what I mean? And so you can't say that's the reason. So it only comes down to the way he looks. People had so many fat guy jokes about Andy Ruiz. He embraced it. He embraced it, eating the Snicker bars before his fight and stuff like that. But that's how you got to do it. You can't have you can't be defensive about your appearance because it's you. You know, you have to make peace at what that is. And I think that Andy Ruiz is a guy that always was bothered by his appearance. Look what happened after he beat Anthony Joshua. What did he say? I want to be Mexican Anthony Joshua. Why? Because Anthony Joshua was in shape. He was built. Okay? But I think because he said that, I think it's always been something that bothered him. Like a lot of people that are obese, I think they have a problem with it deep down inside. Some not too deep. And I think Bob Arum was already prejudiced because of his appearance. And when he took that first loss, he said, the hell with him. That's what happened. That's what I believe. Okay? Because there's no reason why Bob Arum would just stop promoting a guy that lost once on a split decision. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, he went out for the WBO. You have 3 other belts that you could have marketed this guy. You could have put him in there with a lot of fighters, but you didn't. So he had to pay himself out of the contract to get rid of you because he knew you were doing him wrong. And I think it all came down to how Andy Ruiz looked. And it just hit me. It's like, I'm thinking, why does he rag on Andy Ruiz so hard? And it ain't because he's not a good fighter, because we know Andy Ruiz can fight, right? He only has 2 losses, right? So, and the first loss was a split decision. It could have went either way. So being that's not one of the reasons you get rid of a fighter or stop promoting a fighter. You know, throw the cold shoulder on a fighter. That's not the reason at all. So it did come down to appearance. It came down to the fact that Andy Ruiz is not the ideal heavyweight. Andy Ruiz is just a guy that can fight. He has some moves. He's quick to be a fat man, right? Or an obese man, right? And I think that was enough to sign him. But I think that prejudice was already there from day one from Bob Arum. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think of my theory on Bob Arum and the reason he doesn't like Andy Ruiz. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.